Hey kids, I want to see some pearly whites tonight. No running the toothbrush under the sink and calling it good.
Okay, Mom.
And stretch.
My back has taken an unfortunate turn for the worse.
Yeah, why are they letting these kids stay up so late anyway? Don't they know we're frozen here all day?
I don't think I can do this anymore.
Hey, watch it there, Gloria.
Stop calling me that. You know it's not my name.
Then maybe, I don't know, stop wearing that goofy name tag.
Gabriel, what is troubling you?
Watch out for the baby!
As a porcelain recreation of a certified messenger of God, I've delivered a lot of important messages in my life.
More like recreations of important messages.
But guys, the family in this house, they couldn't hear an announcement from God even if I destroyed the Wi-Fi router with a blast from my trumpet. One day I will unplug you forever.
We hear you loud and clear, Gabriel. Oh, you got a little dandruff on your shoulders.
That's not dandruff, it's dust. You have it too, Joseph.
Huh?
All of us do. The kids don't even play with us anymore.
What a shame they stopped flinging us across the room, huh?
I watch our family rush back and forth all season. Parties, shopping, school programs. Nobody even looks in our direction anymore.
Gabriel has a point. If we packed ourselves up and left for the basement, would anyone even notice?
You know what gets noticed? A heavenly host lighting up the sky. I used to stop traffic, you know.
Here we go again. Hey, guys, remember that time in Bethlehem? I was the main event.
You literally screamed and face planted into a sheep.
And you know, we don't talk about that.
Gentlemen, please, the baby. But to your point, Gabriel, it's true. They binge, scroll, laugh hysterically at, what do they call them?
TikToks. Not to mention talking all over each other, never listening. It's exasperating. Sorry there, buddy. I thought you were a clown.
What he's saying is true. Our family, they're a generation given to distraction and haste.
A clamor of many voices.
And the noisiest bunch this side of the Jordan.
Then what hope do we have of delivering them the good news of great joy?
Remember that while you have trumpets at your beck and call, it was also a quiet visit and a soft voice that called me to God's purpose.
It came to me in a dream.
And a star for us.
This news is too life-changing. It will never get lost in wrapping paper and social media. Because Jesus doesn't need a spotlight. He only needs a manger.
Hey, Gloria, just be grateful you're not stuck in a snow globe like that guy.
The life of solitary confinement. God help him.
So as our nativity story began, nativity scene Gabriel was discouraged and frustrated. He remembered the glory days when angels lit up the sky and the world would stop to listen, when shepherds fell on their faces in fear and wonder, when even the wisest men would drop everything to travel across continents following a star. But now in this family's house, well, this family is too busy scrolling through social media and shopping online and running from one Christmas event to the next. They've got a calendar packed tighter than a holiday fruitcake. Does this seem familiar? Is this maybe your experience at Christmas time? Gabriel complained to his nativity scene buddies, saying, "We're covered in dust and the family goes by us with barely a glance." They couldn't hear an announcement from God, even if I destroyed their Wi-Fi router. The average American checks their phone at least 144 times a day. If you watch TV or any kind of media, you know we're bombarded with thousands of messages advertising products and services to us. It seems we live in an age of spiritual ADD, making it really difficult to hear from God with all of these distractions and busyness. So Gabriel, he seems ready to give up, turn in his trumpet, and ask for a transfer to a different department. But then Mary, nativity scene Mary, offered some wisdom that cuts through the frustration. Yes, she acknowledges God has trumpets and heavenly hosts at his command, and he can split the skies open and shake mountains when he wants to get someone's attention. Mary gently reminds the frustrated angel, and really reminds us, that her own calling came not through flashing lights or a celestial mariachi band, but came rather in a quiet, personal conversation with God's messenger. And that God spoke to Joseph in a dream. No pyrotechnics, just a whisper in his sleep. And that the wise men were not led to Jesus by GPS, but by a single star in the night sky. Mary reminded her nativity scene's friend that the good news of God with us, that it never gets lost in wrapping paper or social media, because Jesus didn't need a spotlight. Jesus only needed a manger. And that good news, it still breaks through the busyness and the distractions of our lives. Not always in big, flashy, Instagram-worthy moments, but often in quiet and overlooked ones. The moments that we might dismiss as ordinary are often filled with the extraordinary work and grace of God. So today I want you to consider 3 ways that God still works in our world and what that then means for us in a culture that never seems to slow down, that has trouble really listening, and leaves little room in their lives for wonder and awe of God. There were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." Suddenly, a great company of the heavenly hosts appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests." So let me set the scene for you in this passage. Shepherds in the first century were like the night watchmen of the wilderness. They lived rough with their flocks 24/7. See, these guys were not the genteel farmers that at the end of the workday they got to go back to their cozy, comfortable cottage. No, they faced down wolves and bears and bandits through the dead of the night. And in many ways, they were society's forgotten people. Shepherds were not permitted to testify in court because their word was considered unreliable. Shepherds were also ritually unclean almost all the time, and therefore they were excluded from temple worship. And so in the first century, if you were throwing a party and then wanted to invite then the important people, well, these shepherds don't make the list. So when an angel appeared, and not just showed up, but appeared with the glory of the Lord blazing around him, like a supernatural floodlight, these tough guys, these hardened guys who faced down predators, well, they were terrified. The Greek word in the passage suggests that they were scared out of their minds. They were overwhelmed with this earth-shaking, pants-wetting moment. They were scared, and they'd seen a lot. And then, as if one angel wasn't enough, suddenly a great company of the heavenly hosts appeared. So picture it, God's full orchestra, no holds barred, can't miss it moment. God making absolutely clear and certain that the message comes through loud and clear. And so this is what nativity scene Gabriel, this is what he remembers and longs for. The sky-splitting, undeniable moments when God shows up and when God's presence is so obvious that even the most distracted person, they have to stop and pay attention. I think we may feel the same as Gabriel sometimes. At least I know I do. We want God to prove that he's there with something unmistakable. Maybe it's to heal our loved one instantly after we pray, to fix our marriage dramatically, or provide for us miraculously just in time. See, we live in a show-me culture. We want evidence and proof, something maybe we can even post online and say, "Look what God did." And yes, sometimes God does show up in that way. God, you might say, thunders in his pronouncement and his provision. He shows up in ways that leave no doubt and no room for skepticism. The cancer disappears. The prodigal child returns home. And the provision of finances, it shows up just in time. And so the skies, in a sense, have split open, and beyond a doubt and beyond question, we know that we serve a God who still does miracles. So I'd remind you, consider your own journey with God. Have there been moments, and maybe even just one, when God's work in your life was so clear and obvious, there was no doubt that God did it? Was it a job opportunity that was out of nowhere? Was it a broken relationship that was healed when you least expected it? Or was it an addiction that was broken in an instant? So whatever it was for you, that God moment when he showed up and showed off, I want to encourage you to remember those times. Those aren't just nice memories. Those are the moments that will carry you through the difficulties. They'll serve as the fuel for your faith during the times when God seems quiet. When doubt or questions arise about God's faithfulness or God's goodness, and there'll be those times you'll have those questions and doubts about God. I'd encourage you, pull out those memories, those times when God did show up and provided for you. Let them remind you that you serve a God who can and still does thunder when he chooses to. And this instruction to remember God and his faithfulness and his provision, remembrance is a theme that we see really throughout the scriptures. From the Old Testament to the New Testament, God speaks to his people. He says over and over, remember, remember, remember. Give praise to the Lord, proclaim his name, make known among the nations what he has done. Sing to him, sing praise to him, tell of all his wonderful acts. Look to the Lord and his strength. Seek his face always. Remember the wonders he has done, his miracles, and the judgments he pronounced. He is the Lord our God. Remember Jesus Christ, raised from the dead, descended from David. This is my gospel. He remains faithful. Keep reminding God's people of these things. See, remembering God's faithfulness in the past, it's going to carry you through the difficult times in the present. I would also encourage you, don't keep these God-thundering moments, these God show-up, show-off moments to yourself. You need to share them with others. You need to testify to God's faithfulness in your life, because your story of God's work may be exactly what someone else needs to hear. As they are wondering and struggling with, God, is he there? Is he real? Is he going to show up? Maybe you sharing your story is exactly what they need in that moment. In our testimony-shy culture, I think we need to reclaim the art of telling the story of what God has done for us. And doing it not in a bragging way, not in a boastful way, definitely not in a way where we make it about us, but in a way in which we bear witness to the goodness and faithfulness of God, a God who still moves in powerful ways. And so sometimes God thunders, but in my life, I found more often he does not. Instead of thundering, God whispers. The Lord said to Elijah, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. So here's the backstory on this passage. Elijah, a prophet of God, he had just called down fire from heaven on Mount Carmel as a demonstration of who God was, as a testimony to God's power and presence in the world. And God answered Elijah's prayer in a really kind of thundering, dramatic way. Fire from heaven came down in a way that consumed not just the sacrifice on the altar, but the wood, the stones the altar was made of, the water that surrounded, even the dirt that it was built on, were annihilated by the power of God. And so, this man of God, Elijah, he witnesses this dramatic, incredible thundering of God where God shows up and shows off. And then it was only a very short time later that Jezebel was hunting him. And Elijah, he's running scared. He was in kind of a dark and desperate place. He was emotionally and spiritually bankrupt, and he was actually praying to God, God, let me die. When God then told Elijah to stand on the mountain because he was about to pass by, Elijah maybe expected God would, do another pyrotechnics display, fire from heaven. Maybe it's an earthquake. Maybe it's a tornado. Another undeniable demonstration of God's divine power. But it turns out that God chose to give a bit of a theology lesson wrapped in a weather report of sorts. See, God didn't speak with thunder or wind or earthquake or fire, but with a sound that the Hebrew text describes as a sound of gentle stillness or a voice of thin silence. See, God chose the gentlest possible of replies, a whisper, to communicate his will to his prophet. And I think that whisper, it serves as an invitation to intimacy, to lean in, to listen closely, to be still enough to hear heaven's softest voice. So nativity scene Mary reminded Gabriel that her own life and world-changing calling, it came not with flashing lights or a heavenly chorus, but in a quiet, personal conversation with God's messenger. And no Instagram-worthy backdrop or viral moment, just a young woman and an angel having what might seem like an ordinary conversation. Joseph heard from God in a dream, no thundering voice, just God speaking through the mysterious language of sleep. And the wise men, again, they weren't led by GPS with celestial turn-by-turn directions, but with a single star that appeared night after night, faithfully and quietly guiding them. You see, God doesn't need to prove his presence with volume. Some of God's most profound communication comes in frequencies that only the quiet heart can detect. See, we live in a world that operates at kind of max volume. There's a joke about turn it up to 11. If you've ever seen the movie Spinal Tap, they're like, our amps go to 11. Well, that's the world we live in, right? Turned up to 11. Full volume. From the music in our earbuds to the online arguing to the constant distractions that our phones provide to even just the internal chatter of our own thought life. And we've been trained to respond to the urgent, the loud, the demanding, pay attention to me. But God often speaks in the spaces that are between the noise, which means if we're going to hear from God, if we're going to hear the quiet whisper of God, then we've got to have some quiet times and quiet spaces in our lives. So that means building some rhythms of stillness and quietness into your day. It's part of your prayer time, but it's more than that. It might be that you take 5 minutes of just silence before you start your car and head out somewhere. Maybe you take a minute of just breathing and quietness before you look at your phone the first thing each morning. You see, your soul needs space to hear God's whisper. The psalmist instructs us to be still and know that I am God. In our busy and noise-filled culture, being still might seem difficult, maybe feels impossible, and maybe even a little uncomfortable. That's okay. Embrace that discomfort. Lean into it, because God often speaks in those spaces where we're afraid to enter, and in the uncomfortable spaces. And so sometimes God thunders and sometimes God whispers, but all the time God shows up. And whether he thunders or whether he whispers, either way, God shows up. See, the God of the Bible is the God who dwells with us. He is God incarnate. He is Emmanuel, God with us. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was made with God in the beginning. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. And so when the Apostle John wrote this about Jesus, writing that Jesus made his dwelling among us, he used a word that literally means pitched his tent or tabernacled. And tabernacle was a big tent. And John's saying that's what Jesus did. And it wasn't accidental language. John is deliberately calling to mind the imagery of the Old Testament tabernacle. And the tabernacle was that portable tent in which God's presence would dwell. And God dwelled there with his people during their wilderness wanderings. Here's kind of a beautiful irony of God dwelling in a tent. See, God could have chosen anything, anywhere. A palace. Jesus could have been born in a palace and announced in a throne room or celebrated in a temple, but instead, he chose the humblest accommodation imaginable. He chose a feeding trough for animals in a cave that probably smelled of farm animals. And so the God who created galaxies, he chose to sleep on straw. And the God who commands angel armies chose to cry when he felt hungry. The God who could have demanded a royal welcome chose to be born unnoticed by anyone important. This was not weakness by God. It was actually the ultimate welcome by God, because it was a welcome for all people everywhere. As we live in a time now when people are really kind of obsessed with status and exclusivity and being in the VIP section and having a premium membership and first-class accommodations. And the higher up the social ladder you climb, the more exclusive your experience is expected to be. I think Christmas kind of turns the world and its values upside down, because the most important birth in human history happened in the most ordinary place, to the most ordinary people, but in the most accessible way possible. Instead of God choosing the extraordinary, he chose the ordinary. He chose a manger. And this nativity scene, Mary reminded those around her that Jesus doesn't need a spotlight. Jesus only needed a manger. And this points to the truth at the heart of Christmas. God chose to be Emmanuel. God chose to be God with us. And so the manger was the great equalizer. It meant that rich and poor alike could approach it. Educated and illiterate could understand the message, and religious and irreligious people could find welcome in that space. See, God did not come presenting a multi-step plan in which humanity was to work their way through their own effort and striving toward him. That is not what God did. Jesus, the Word, became flesh. Jesus came to be with us. Or as Eugene Peterson wrote, the Word moved into the neighborhood. The God who chose a manger is a God who can handle your Monday morning, your difficult and broken relationships, your imperfect attempts at faith and faithfulness. See, Jesus specializes in ordinary places and ordinary people. So why not then invite Jesus into the ordinary, everyday aspects of your life? Like how about on your commute? Or when you're doing chores, or when you're speaking with family and friends, invite Jesus into those conversations. Because Jesus doesn't need a cathedral to meet with you. He's perfectly comfortable in your kitchen, in your car, and in your workplace. And if you will allow Jesus into those ordinary, everyday spaces, Jesus will then give you extraordinary opportunities to share him with the people around you. See, some of the most profound ministry does not happen in this church building. It happens in coffee shops It happens in your front yard. It happens where you work. See, God shows up when his people show up in his name with his character. Meaning, when we show love and grace and generosity and kindness to other people, the love of God, his grace, his mercy, his generosity could be seen through us. And God is then glorified. Jesus taught, "Let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Nativity scene Gabriel, he wanted the big show, the sky-splitting, undeniable, social media trending moment that would force everyone to pay attention. And sometimes God does work in this way. He has, and he will again. Sometimes he thunders. But as the characters of the nativity scene remind us, the world was changed by something far simpler and quieter, a baby in a manger. One of the most miraculous events in human history happened quietly and humbly. The God who could have demanded a spotlight instead chose a manger. This Christmas season, God may speak to you in the spectacular. He may show up in dramatic ways and answer prayer quickly, in providing miraculous provision and the undeniable presence of his goodness and greatness. But it's far more likely that he may not thunder. More likely, God will speak in the stillness. He'll speak in the waiting. He'll speak in the ordinary moments that may feel unremarkable, but are no less filled with his grace and presence. So the question is not whether or not God is speaking. I think the question that we each need to answer is, are we listening? Are we listening if God speaks with a whisper? Could it be that you are so looking for God's thunder, you're deaf to the whisper? Are you so impatient for the dramatic show up and show off that you are overlooking the indwelling God who is with you? Whether God thunders or whispers, whether he moves quickly or waits patiently, whether he dwells in a palace or a manger, he is Emmanuel, God with us. So in the chaos of Christmas shopping, or the excitement of Christmas morning, or the joy that a family gathering brings, or the sadness of an empty chair at that family gathering, God is with us. That is the message of Christmas. God with us is the good news that still breaks through all the distraction and all the busyness and all the noise. God with us changed everything for the world. This Christmas, may you know that God is with you and that God is for you. God loves you. And the proof of God's love is Jesus Emmanuel, God with us.